everyone. Hello, welcome to my Friday night curry club. Welcome to my kitchen. I hope everybody's well. Another week done and dusted, and I hope you've all survived and got through and had a good week, and you're all ready, chilled out, ready for the weekend, and we can all cook a curry together. Okay, so today I thought we'd do something a little bit different. Well, I say a little bit different, not that different, but a veggie dish. I know that a lot of people have been saying, oh, we haven't had a veggie dish yet, so that's what I thought we'd do today. Before I launch into the recipe and cooking and all of that kind of stuff, I just want to go through the usual sort of hellos and see who has logged on, see who is watching. So please do say a big hello. Let me know where you are in the world. Let me know where you're watching from. Let me know if you're cooking. Let me know if you're just watching. Let me know if you're picking up tips. And as I say every week, this is your opportunity to ask lots of questions. If you've got certain things that you want to find out about, or if you've got certain things that you want to know about, then use this time. Ask me, ask away. I will try and answer as many as I can as we go through the session. If I can't answer them, or if I don't get around to them, I will answer them later on, as I always say. So, hello to everybody. Have we got lots of people?
Lisa from Latvia.
Hello, Lisa from Latvia. Welcome. I think it's a first for you, is it? Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Dominique in France has said winds of 80 kilometers an hour.
Oh no, Dominique, doesn't sound good. We've had rain today, but it's been warm. It hasn't been too bad, but they are saying we're going to get some storms this evening. So brace yourself. I hope you stay safe and everything. So welcome and thank you for joining me.
We've got Regina from Scotland.
Hi, Regina from Scotland.
Russia.
We've got Maria from Russia. Welcome, welcome, welcome everybody. How are we all? Do let me know if you're cooking. Let me know if you are just watching as well, because it just helps me pace myself. If you guys are cooking, I'll sort of cook with you.
Suzanne is napping in the rain at Sunset Beach in NC.
Oh, hello, Suzanne, napping in the rain in New York, is that?
NC,
Oh.
I don't know where that is.
Well, welcome, thank you. I hope the rain isn't too bad. We have got a big happy birthday to say to Sugeen though. Happy birthday, Sugeen. I know you're not cooking today, but I think you'll be doing this tomorrow. Enjoy your birthday dinner. I hope you're being cooked for. I'm sure you are. But a big happy birthday from me and everybody else. Do wish Sue a big happy birthday. Okay, so we are going to make something called Chole Bhatura today, which is one of my favourites. It's very much a sort of brunch style dish, or even breakfast style dish. But in India, you'd go to the dubbas or these little huts where you go and have breakfast, and they make gulje, which is another type of bread, but bhatura is something that we make at home. So these are really soft, fluffy breads, but you have them with this chickpea, this spiced chickpea dish. There are, again, as I said before, lots and lots of different ways of making these dishes. Everybody has their own way. The way that I cook is just my way of doing it, the way that I've been taught, and I just like to share that with you. So I will go through what I've got going on here. I'll talk you through all the little bits. As I said, any questions, any hellos. If there's more people joining, please do keep saying hello and keep saying, asking questions and that kind of thing. Okay, right. Any more hellos before we get going? Oh, and a cheers. Happy Friday, everybody.
We've got Ali is watching from New Zealand. It's 5:18 Saturday morning for her.
Hi, Ali from New Zealand. Wow, I think you are the furthest afield. Amazing to have you join. Thank you.
We've got, Lois is here as well.
Hello, Lois, again. Brilliant to have you join us. I hope you're well as well. I hope you're keeping okay. Oh, New Zealand, you guys, you're all COVID sorted, aren't you? Well done. Brilliant news. That's really, really good. Who else have we got?
Have someone from Saudi Arabia.
We've got people joining from Saudi, all across the world. Amazing. Well, welcome into my kitchen, and thank you.
Well,
got a
There's
couple of
Terry.
questions. Hi, Terry.
Terry is watching from their hospital bed in Canada.
Oh, in Canada from your hospital bed. I hope you're okay. I hope you're staying strong. I hope you're not too poorly.
Yvonne from South Africa. Mark also from South Africa.
Hi, Mark and Yvonne, separately, but both from South Africa. Welcome.
And then Sanj has asked, do you do any recipes in an instant pot?
So the instant pot, I'm assuming, is exactly the same as the slow cooker. So if you haven't seen yet, but I have got a recipe book all about Indian recipes and how you do them in the slow cooker. It's called the Easy Indian Slow Cooking Cookbook. You can find it on my website, and you can just actually, we have got one. I'll show you what it looks like so you know. If you go to the website, you can just order it there. You can also find it on Amazon. I've got a copy here. This is what it looks like, the Easy Indian Slow Cooking Cookbook. So that's my cookbook. It's got loads and loads of recipes in there, various bits and pieces in there. So from desserts right through to curries and so on. So there you go. I'll put that over there. Okay, right. So we're going to get going. I'm going to talk you through these first. So what I've got going on here is, we said it's a chickpea dish. So I've got my chickpeas. I'm using just tin chickpeas, which I've just put through a sieve, and those are sat there. I've got my masala double, or my spice tin. I will very quickly talk you through all the spices. Those of you who've joined before will know what I've got. So I've got chili powder, turmeric, coriander seeds, mustard seeds, fenugreek leaves, cumin seeds, and garam masala. And these are your 7 key spices that you tend to use in most of your Indian dishes. There are a whole load of other spices that you can use in various other dishes as well, but this is what we're using, the majority of what we're using today. We're not using all of them, but I'll talk you through those as we get going. I've got some tin tomatoes, just plum whole tomatoes. I tend to opt for whole tomatoes rather than chopped, just because they give a much nicer gravy. The other bits that we have got some slightly more unusual ingredients today, and I have answered some questions over the week if you haven't been able to find them, so I'll talk you through those as well. I'm using ghee for this dish. If you don't want to, you can just use some oil. That's absolutely fine. I've got a tea bag in a jug, which I'm going to fill with hot water in a minute. I've got my ginger, my garlic, my chilies. I've got some lemon for the end. And I've got, this is probably the one that's been causing the most questions, some tamarind. So this is what tamarind looks like when you buy it in a block. You can get tamarind in various different forms. You can get it in a paste, which is probably the most convenient way of using it. You can also get it as a concentrate, which is a concentrate obviously, but it's much darker. It's almost like tar. It's really thick and black. You can buy it in blocks, which you then need to rehydrate, which is what I'm going to do here. If you buy a paste, you don't need to do that rehydration bit. So tamarind is it's a fruit from a tree that's native to India, and they grow in pods. And in each of those, they sort of hang down a little bit like runner beans, but they're pods like this. And in each pod, there's a big seed, and it's quite a fibrous fruit. The fruit gives, or the flavour that it gives you is almost like sour sweets. It gets you right there. It's really tangy, a little bit like lemon, but not as harsh. And it's got a fruity sweetness to it. So it is quite different and it's quite unique. So if you can get tamarind, it lasts for, if you buy it in a block, it's dehydrated, it lasts for ages. But even if you can get a paste, that's great. I steer away from the concentrates because I just find that they're really strong and really overpowering. But I'll talk you through a little bit more of that when we get going. So that's tamarind. And then the other 2 key bits that we're using here, we're using something called Kala Namak, or black salt, also known as Himalayan pink salt. And this is a very minerally salt. It's quite sulfurous in its flavour. I really like this, and it gives a really lovely zing. And then I've also got some amchur. So those of you who don't know what amchur is, it's raw mango and it's the skin of raw mango that's been dried and then just blitzed into a powder, and it just gives you a really zingy, almost like a seasoning type flavour. It's not as harsh as lemon, but all of these ingredients are very much sort of pushing towards a nice zingy, spicy dish. So that's why we're using all of these sort of different condiments today.
We have quite a few questions.
We've got lots of questions. Okay, before I get going, let's get on those.
What can you use? I think the question was, is there a replacement for amchur?
So, obviously, I know some of these ingredients are really difficult to get hold of, unless you've got a really good Indian store close to you. So if you haven't got black salt, just use normal salt. If you haven't got amchur, then don't worry about it. Just miss it out for this occasion. We are going to add lemon as well, so you are going to get that sharpness and that zingy flavour from those elements and the tamarind as well. So don't worry too much. If you've ever heard of chaat masala, chaat masala is like a seasoning. It's an Indian seasoning, and it's a mixture of coriander, cumin. It's got amchur in there. It's got all of those zingy flavours. And you might, in fact, I'll show you what it looks like. So if you have seen it, you might see something like that in the shops. It's a chaat masala. Something like that will give you all of those sort of flavours that you're looking for. So that's the kind of thing that you're after. As I say, if you can't find it, miss it out for today. Honestly, it'll be absolutely fine.
And then someone's asked, what brand of spices do you use?
What brand of spices do I use? It really depends on. I don't stick to a specific brand. That's not what I tend to do. There are certain spices that I like to use, and I will try and find the best ones of those. So they're literally all over the place. I just like to source the best stuff that I can. It's difficult to say whether one specific brand is better than the other. It really does. Some of their products can vary quite significantly. Any more questions then before we get going?
How long can dosa mixture be stored before cooking?
Dosa mixture.
That's what they said.
So I've got a question about dosa. So dosa, when you make the batter, you make up the batter, you soak it first, make up the batter, and then let it ferment overnight. I think it'll probably be okay for a couple of days, but I wouldn't really, there's no real point leaving it any longer than that. Ideally, best results 24 hours afterwards. It's fermented, then you should be able to go with it.
Sue's having a birthday steak made for her.
Ah, Sue, enjoy that birthday steak. Let's do a little cheers. Happy birthday to you, Sue.
And then Maria has asked, she says, Harry, I want to ask about previous recipes. Sometimes or usually you make a masala as a pretty dry paste. Sometimes, like with shrimps, it's of a sauce consistency.
Generally, the masala tends to be more paste-like. When you get to that paste consistency, that's when all your flavours, that's when all your spices, that's when everything comes through, and that's what you're after. It really depends on the sauce that you're looking for, but generally, all of my masalas, I get them down to that paste, and then from that paste, I will then tweak the amount of liquid that I add depending on whether I want it saucy or not saucy. So it really does depend. There's no sort of right or wrong, but generally you want to get your masala to the point where it's a really thick paste. That's where you'll get your flavour. I hope that helps.
And then Debbie has asked, she says she's got concentrated tamarind, so when we get to that point, can you just...
Yeah, so I'll talk you through all of the different amounts as we get to that point. So yeah, we'll get going. So I'm assuming there's quite a few of you that are actually cooking, because a few of you have got your ingredients and so on. Let me know if you're cooking. Please take pictures whilst you're cooking. Take pictures of me on your screen, and please do share those with me afterwards, because I just love to see how you guys work through the process, and I love to see those finished final pictures of your dishes. It's really lovely to see that. Okay, so shall we get going? Everybody with me? Right, first things first then, I'm going to add a little bit of ghee into my pan. And we're going to start cooking. So ghee goes in, and I'm going to add some cumin seeds. But before I do that, I've got it on a fairly low heat. I just want to get all of my other bits and pieces prepped. So I've got my onions here, and I want to cook them in nice long
Should dosa mixture be stored in the fridge or kept at room temp?
So dosa mixture, if you're fermenting it to cook the next day, you don't want it to be in the fridge because it won't ferment. You need it to be at room temperature. I hope that helps. Okay, so I've got one onion here. I'm just prepping it, getting it ready.
Gary's asked, why do you use tinned tomatoes rather than freshly chopped? Seems better to use fresh.
It does seem better to use fresh. It really depends on what you're doing in terms of your dish and your recipe. Sometimes I will use tin, sometimes I'll use fresh. If you can get hold of really nice, ripe, beautiful flavoured tomatoes, absolutely go for those fresh tomatoes. It's not always the case, so it's always good to have a stock of tinned tomatoes in the fridge to use as and when you want to. So there's no right or wrong. What did I say?
Fridge.
I meant cupboard. Tin of tomatoes in your cupboard, not your fridge. Okay, so I'm going to put my cumin seeds in, and same as always, you are putting your spices, your whole spices into your oil or your pan for the purpose of them to release those aromatics, release their natural oils that they've got within them. So you pop them in, and when you can smell it, when you can smell the fragrance of those spices, that's when you know you're ready to go in with your next ingredient. So I've got my onion here. I'm going to get my second one ready whilst we are waiting, and get those going in. There we go. Now, with your spices, it doesn't take long for them to go the other way and become burnt. If you burn your spices at this stage, get rid of them, start again, because there's nothing you can do to get rid of that bitterness that you'll get from the from burnt spices. So I'm going to add a little bit more actually, just to... I'm making a little bit more than the volumes that we've got on the website. I'm doing 800 grams of chickpeas today, just to have a few more in the fridge for the weekend. Okay, so once your spices are nice and aromatic and fragrant, go in with your onions. Give that a little stir through, and make sure you turn down the heat. You don't want it too hot. There we go. So once they've got a bit of heat to them, I'm going to turn that back up just to get them all coated with the oil and to get them starting to cook. So let that do its thing. I'm going to get my garlic and my chilies and my ginger ready. So I'm going to be using 5 cloves of garlic. I'm just going to slice them. I want this to be nice and chunky because I'll be using those lovely Bhatura breads to scoop it all up and enjoy it. So I want a bit of chunk to this. I don't want it to be all pureed and fine. And okay, that's sat there. Let those onions cook. Okay, so my garlic is there. I'm going to put 2 chilies in here, and I'm just going to take the ends off, and I'm just going to slit them lengthways. Because I want that chunkiness in these chilies as well. Now be careful of your fingers when you're doing this, and also wash your hands afterwards. I don't want you touching your face with chili on them. Okay, right, so my onions are starting to do what they need to do. I've got my ginger. No, I haven't yet. I've got my garlic ready. I'm just going to also julienne the ginger as well.
Is it good to use tin soup?
Is it what, sorry?
He said, is it good to use tin soup? Can someone let me know? I bought lots for lockdown.
Tinned soup?
Yeah.
I don't understand the question, sorry.
Mr. G said that he was having a takeaway and he asked how many poppadoms he should order.
Mr. G, you're here with us, are you? Lovely to have you join us. In terms of poppadoms, if it's just you eating, I'd suggest maybe just go for one. You probably need to watch what you're eating, don't you? I'm joking. I'm joking. Before I offend anybody. Okay. So my onions are doing what they're doing. I've got my garlic, I've got my ginger, and I've got my chilies ready to go in. Whilst the onions are starting to cook, we're going to talk about the tea and the tamarind. So I'm just going to add some hot water into my tea bag, just to let that come through.
Can you move the tamarind?
Okay, so that's just going to sit there for a minute, and then I'm going to add some hot water to the tamarind, which is in here. Now, if you've got a paste, you don't need to do this. You can just use the paste as it comes. If you've got a concentrate, again, you don't need to do this. You can just use that as it comes. Now, when it comes to tamarind varies massively from one product to another. And sometimes it can be really sharp and really tangy, and other times it's a little softer or a little bit more gentle. Now, the only way to really tell how tangy it is by tasting it. So please do have a little taste of it, even if it's a concentrate or your paste. Just have a little tiny taste and see how tangy it is. Different people like their food at different tanginess. I like mine quite tangy. I know other people can find it too strong. So just have a taste of it and make a decision on how much you want to add. If you've got a paste, you can just add it. And I would probably recommend, a paste tends to be a little bit more gentle. So a paste, I would say probably a good heaped teaspoon to a tablespoon is going to be enough. If you are using a concentrate, just a teaspoon will probably be more than enough. The reason I don't like the concentrate is because they turn your dish very, very dark in colour, and I just don't think the flavour is as good. My personal choice is always to get a dry, the slabs. You can get them as wet slabs or as dry slabs of tamarind, and just get those and just do what I'm doing. All you do is you just put it in boiling water and you just hydrate it, and you end up with this, which is just a brown water, and that's the tamarind water. Now you can do this and leave it, and you do it once and you can sieve the water out and use the water, and then you can rehydrate the tamarind solids that you've got and do it again. So you can keep doing it for a couple of times. So I'm just going to let that sit until we need it. Okay, is everyone happy? Any questions about tamarind? Because it does seem to cause a little bit of confusion, so please do ask away. I'm happy to help if you've got questions on that. Okay, so my onions are starting to get a little bit of colour to them. We've talked about this before. When we're cooking a meat dish, we end up, what the plan is, that you end up with a really nice, deep, dark, caramelised brown onion. But when you're cooking a vegetable dish or a prawn dish or something like that, a fish dish, you don't really need that depth of flavour in the masala because you want the ingredients to sing for themselves. So with this dish, we're not going for that deep dark brown, but we do want to get a good golden brown colour on them, so we are going to cook them down a little bit. Now, I've started to get a little bit of colour on mine. Can you see? There we go. So that's looking good, but I still want them to cook down a little bit more. But into this, now that I've got a bit of colour on my onions, I'm going to add my other ingredients. So my ginger, garlic and my chilies are going in.
Can you wish Sushma a happy birthday?
Sushma, happy birthday, my love. Happy birthday to you. Thank you for joining. Thank you for watching. I hope you have a lovely day, and I hope somebody's cooking for you today. But I hope you have a really lovely birthday.
And then, do you prefer wet or dry tamarind?
So the question is, do I prefer wet or dry tamarind? I do like the wet stuff. I think the wet stuff is quite nice. But either of those is good. The dry stuff obviously lasts for a lot longer because it's completely dehydrated and can just sit in your cupboard until you need it. The wet stuff, not so much, because obviously it's got the moisture in there. So it depends how often you're going to use it. I do like, for me, tamarind is a really lovely flavour. It is a nice flavour that I enjoy, and I will quite often just break a little bit off and have a good old chew of a bit of tamarind just to... It's like having Haribos or sour sweets. Okay. Now that my garlic and my ginger and chilies have gone in there, I can start to get the aromatics coming through, and you can really smell that.
What is your... Someone said red versus yellow onion, discuss.
Red versus yellow onion. It really depends. I mean, in the UK, it doesn't seem to be that much of a big thing. So I have talked about this before. What I tend to do, red onions, I tend to use more for salads and that kind of thing. And white onions or brown onions, whatever you want to call them, I tend to use more for cooking. It really depends on the dish that you're doing as well, I guess. And shallots are a lot more gentle. It really depends what you're cooking and what you want to make. In India, a lot of the onions that you get tend to be, they're not red onions, they're almost pinky. They've got a slight pink tinge to them. So they're almost like a hybrid. They're not quite a red onion, they're not a white onion. So they tend to be smaller, a lot more potent as well. What are your opinions? Do give me your opinions as well.
Where can you buy tamarind in the UK?
Where can you buy tamarind in the UK? You can buy tamarind as a paste from most supermarkets because it's used in Thai cuisine, it's used in Indian food. You can buy the pastes. I know Bart as a brand do the paste, but any good Indian grocery store will have blocks of tamarind. It's just, they'll also have the concentrates, and they also have the pastes as well. So if you feel like your onions are catching a little bit, I'm just going to put a little splash of water in just to lift it off the bottom of the pan. There we go. Lovely. It's looking good. Okay. So I've got my chickpeas here, and I've got my tea. I'm just going to give that a little prod. Just to get that going. Okay, so is anybody making the bhatura with me? Did you get your bread ready beforehand? Let me know in the comments. I got mine ready.
Jack's asked, in which dishes do you think it's best to use coconut milk over just water?
It depends what you're doing. It depends if you're after a coconut flavour. It depends. I mean, you can use coconut milk or water in any dishes, but really it depends what you're doing. If you're wanting those South Indian style flavours, then then go for the coconut water. But if you're aiming for like a North Indian, which is what this is, you wouldn't really use coconut in that. So.
And then, do you have a go-to tamarind chutney recipe?
I do have a go-to tamarind chutney recipe. If you go to the website, if you go to the app, and you type in Imli, IMLEE, Imli, there's a whole load of chutneys, but there's one which is just a plain tamarind one. I've also got a tamarind and date one on there, so there's quite a few. Just have a look on the website. There's loads of.
How much tamarind paste would you use if you don't have a block?
Right, if you don't have a block and you're using a paste rather than the concentrate, I would probably go for, personally, I would probably go for a tablespoon. Okay. So my onions have started to get that lovely cooked down. I just want them to go a little bit more golden. Whilst that's doing that, I'm going to get my spices ready. So in here, I'm going to put in 2 teaspoons of cumin seeds, and I'm going to put in 1 of coriander. Okay. And just so you know, that's not a teaspoon, that's just a small spoon, before I start getting questions about, oh, well, she put the same amount in, but I didn't. Okay, so I'm just going to use my pestle and mortar. I'm just going to grind up the cumin and the coriander to get it to a nice fine paste, but not fine paste, sorry. Get it to a nice crushed seed consistency. I'm never going to get a powder or a fine powder from a pestle and mortar, but the aromatics that you get when you crush your own spices are far better than the pre-ground stuff. I much prefer to do this, and it doesn't really take any time or effort. There we go. Just use the whole space that you've got to grind them up. Okay, my onions have caught a little bit, but that's okay. I'm just going to use the tea now to start. If you were doing this with chickpeas that aren't cooked, i.e. the dried chickpeas, you need to obviously boil them and cook them through. That's when I would put them in a pan and put some water and put 3 or 4 tea bags in and just let them cook down in that tea water. It changes the colour of them and it gives them a really nice sort of smoky flavour. But obviously we're using tin today, so I'm just going to use the water in a slightly different way. Okay, so I've got my spices in here. They're nice and crushed. Right, starting to get a bit of colour on here. Can you see? So into that I'm going to add my tomatoes. So I've got 1 tin of tomatoes and I'm going to put the whole lot in.
Lois has asked, when you use whole seeds in recipes, do your children complain? Mine did when they bit into one by mistake, and now her grandchildren do as well.
It really depends on the recipe or the dish. Sometimes, I mean, mostly kids don't like anything with any texture. So yeah, they will. You know, they are used to some of them, but some things like cardamom and that kind of thing they don't like. So if you still want to use whole spices, what I would recommend is you can either just get a little muslin cloth and make your own little bouquet garni with those whole spices in there. Cook them and then you can just fish it out. That's one way of doing it. Or you can just, you know, crush them and use them crushed if they are going to complain about it, which I know children can do. Then it might be best not to aggravate the situation. Okay, so I've turned my temperature right up. My tomatoes have gone in. I'm also going to add my tea. which is looking lovely. Pop that over there. I'm going to put that in a minute, but I'm going to come back to my tamarind. Now, who's had a taste of their tamarind whilst I've been chatting? Anyone? There we go. So you'll see it just turns into... Ooh, hang on. Oh, I'm going to spill it. There you go. So it just turns into that tamarind water, and essentially it's almost like a paste really, but it's just a little bit watery. So I'm going to add this. I've just got a little sieve. I'm just going to sieve that in because, as I said, you've got all the stones in there and you've got quite a bit of fibrous material that's not going to break down when you cook it. So I'm just going to put that through and just squish it through. Now, as I said, this is on a high temperature now because there's quite a bit of liquid that's gone in, but I want this to cook down. There we go. Right. Give that all a mix through. I want this all to come to a nice temperature. I'm going to let it boil down a little bit because there's quite a lot of liquid in there. But I am going to put...
Is this recipe available on the app?
The recipe is available on the app. The recipe is also available on the website. So all of this information is in those places.
How much tamarind water did you add?
So I roughly measured it by a 5 centimetre piece of tamarind that I put into a bowl, and then I put in enough water just to cover it, and that gives me enough space to squidge it. Not very technical, I know, but giving you a volume or an amount won't make any sense because tamarind varies so significantly. And if you've got a dry block compared to a wet block, it's very, very different. So that's why I'm saying you have to have a little bit of a taste to see how pungent or how sharp your tamarind is. So giving you volumes is, and also, you know, different people have different tastes. Some people like really tangy stuff, some people don't. So you've got to play that a little bit by ear. Okay, so this is going to come to a boil and reduce down. And then when that is starting to reduce a little bit, I'm going to add some more spices into there and then let that just sort of simmer down. And when there's still a little bit of liquid, so this dish we're not taking right down to a paste because we're going to get these chickpeas in there so that they can start to absorb some of those flavours and cook down and start to break down a little bit. So
Johnny's asked,
yep.
Fast forward to the bread stuff. Can I fire up my oil fryer with a basket rather than a wok?
You can. Yes, you can. You should be able to do it in a... If you've got a basket in there, it's absolutely fine because it's not a batter that's going to stick to the basket. So, yes, just make sure when you make... And we'll do it together, but when we make the bhatura, that they will fit in the space that you've got. So you might need to make slightly smaller ones and not huge ones, if that makes sense.
How do you make bhatura without yeast?
I would probably recommend that you don't make bhatura, you make puris, which are slightly different. So I'll talk you through that in a minute. If you don't have yeast, because this is a leavened bread, you can do it with yogurt and self-raising flour to get a little bit of a rise in there. You won't get as big a rise, obviously, but you can do it that way. Or you make puris, which are very similar, but they're just made with atta flour and water, and then we fry those off. Okay, any more questions before I move on?
Bicarbonate soda?
Bicarb, so you can add that, and that gives it a little bit of and sometimes you can put a bit of vinegar in there as well, and that will help it to rise, but it depends what you're looking for. Okay, I'm just going to use the back of my spoon just to squish some of these tomatoes up, just to get this cooking down a little bit more quickly. Right, everybody with me? Who's cooking and who's not? Are we all at the same place? I hope we are. I hope we are. I'm going to add these in a minute, so I'll just put these up here, which we'll add in a moment. Those go in at the end. Okay, so it's starting to simmer away now, which is great, because we want that to start to reduce a little bit and intensify in flavour.
Renu said her sister-in-law makes puris with lemonade and then they rise.
Yeah, so I can remember as a kid, my mum would try all kinds of things to get her bhatura to rise quickly without yeast. So they would use things like sparkling water, they would use lemonade, anything that was fizzy, Eno salts, bicarbonate of soda, obviously, that kind of thing, just to get that little bit of rise in their dough. So yeah, you can use things like that as well. But ideally, I mean, puris are just as good, and they puff up beautifully without having to be leavened. They're a little bit more crispy. These bhatura tend to be much more soft and gentle, just because you've got that yeast in there to help them rise. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Brings back memories. So into there then, I'm going to start to add some of my spices. So I'm going to put in some turmeric, just under a teaspoon there. I'm going to put a little bit of chili powder in. I'm going to add my ground spices. So that was the cumin seeds and the coriander seeds. And then I'm going to add some black salt. Now when you add black salt, you can also add just normal salt as well, just a mixture of the two. So I'm going to put in a teaspoon of the black salt, and then I'm just going to get some normal salt as well. I'm just going to put a little bit of that in. And if you are using the black salt, when you put it in, you will smell it. It's quite sulphurous. It's quite, I won't tell you what my kids call it, but it's pretty stinky. But it's just lovely. It's got a really lovely, lovely flavour that it adds. So that goes in, and that's when you'll start to see the colours changing and so on. So let that simmer. I want that to simmer down a little bit more. I've got a bit of tamarind on the side there. Now this goes back to one of the question that you asked earlier about the paste and when to add it when it's more saucy. So this obviously is much more saucy, but we want the chickpeas to absorb some of that. So what I've got here, so these are just normal tinned chickpeas. If you've got dried chickpeas, you can pressure cook them, but you must make sure that they're nice and soft. You can cook them in, you could make this masala, put your chickpeas in and then put it into a pressure cooker as well. So there's different ways that you can do it. Obviously tinned chickpeas just make life so much easier. But one thing I just wanted to mention was the chickpea water. So this is just the water that you get left over from your tins of chickpeas. There is loads of stuff that you can do with that, so you should keep that and not throw it away. It's called aquafaba, so it's just a protein water. It's just water full of protein. And if you blitz that up, if you whip it with a little bit of sugar, you can make meringues with it. You can turn that into a vegan mayonnaise. There's all kinds of things that you can do with that, so keep hold of it. There's some recipes on the website, that show you how you make meringues and that kind of thing. So it's a really good product to use. So I just wanted to sort of share that with you.
A couple of questions.
Couple of questions,
How
yeah.
long do you pressure cook the chickpeas for?
So with chickpeas, that's a very good question. How long would you pressure cook them for? So I would say you pressure cook. We've always. So I'm really old school when it comes to pressure cookers, because we used to work things on the number of whistles that your pressure cooker makes, and I know that technology has moved on a little bit since then. But for chickpeas, it was, so you put it in, you put your liquid, whatever that might be, in, and your water, and you turn it on, and it goes to a boil and builds in that pressure. And then we would probably say for chickpeas, it would probably be about 4 or 5 whistles, and then you would leave it, turn it down and let it simmer for another sort of 10-20 minutes. Well, that might be a bit too long, but about 10 minutes. And then you let it cool down, let the pressure escape, open it up, check them. And if they weren't quite there, because dried chickpeas and dried lentils and legumes and things can vary quite significantly. And if they weren't quite ready, then you would just put it back on until they were ready. So it can vary a little bit, but that's as good as it goes. Probably about, yeah, I'd say. So bring it up to the boil for a good 3 or 4 whistles, and then another 10 minutes on a simmer, and that should see it through.
Why is it called black salt when it's clearly pink?
Gala namak, do you know, that's a very good question. It is clearly pink. I don't know why. Somebody else who is in the audience may be able to give us a bit of advice here.
Someone said, doesn't black salt have a different flavour to Himalayan pink salt?
I think they're very, very similar. I think they're very similar. Okay, I just want to show you. So this has now got, I don't know if you can see it. So it's starting to thicken, and it's starting to get a little bit more creamy in its texture. And now I'm going to add my chickpeas, and they're going to go in there, and they're going to simmer together and thicken up. So my chickpeas are going to go in now. And let's just give that a stir. Now with this dish, the aim is that your chickpeas cook and they absorb all of that lovely flavour. But we want this to be a fairly dry curry. It's not in a sauce as such. It's dry because then you can scoop them up with your lovely bhatura. So that's going to sit in there and do its thing. And I'm just going to pop the lid on a gentle heat and let that simmer away. I'm going to put the lid on so it's sort of a little bit skewish, so some of the steam can still come through, because we're trying to reduce it down so that it thickens up. So that's the chickpeas done. Is everybody with me who is cooking? Can you let me know where you are? And then we'll move on. We're going to move on to make the bread. So I'm just going to clear a little bit of space here so that we can move on to do our bhatura. It's very quiet today. There's not very many questions going on. Are we?
They're all saying they're learning so much. Very exciting. They're loving it.
Well, that's good to know. Right, I'm just going to have a little clear down, and I'm going to move these bits away so that we can move on. Right. Yeah. Okay, so I'm having a little wipe down here. Okay. That's looking lovely. The colour is really starting to come through. Yum!
People are with you.
Okay, so you're with me. If you're cooking, you're with me. That's amazing.
Johnny is rocking and rolling.
Yay! Good, good. Okay, so here is my bhatura dough. So I made this earlier on with the recipe that's on the website. So I've got I think it's 250 grams of flour, some yeast, a teaspoon of yeast, a teaspoon of sugar, a little bit of salt, a couple of tablespoons of yogurt and milk, and then I literally just put it into my blitzer.
Can you recommend a spice tin?
I can recommend a spice tin. So I've just had a question about a spice tin. So if you go to my website, either on the app, and you go to the store, we sell these tins with the 7 key spices and a spice guide in there as well. The garam masala is my own blend of garam masala. So if you go to the website, go to the app, we'll put a link up for you as well. But if you go there, just order it. We'll get it out to you as soon as we can.
Debbie's still trying to reduce her liquid.
That's fine. You take your time, reduce your liquid. Even if it's still, you can put your chickpeas in, and that will just give it time to absorb the flavours from the masala. So don't be too worried about putting them in too early.
Can you use wholemeal self-raising flour for dough? What ratio to white, if yes?
So what was the question?
Can you use wholemeal self-raising flour?
You can use wholemeal just use it in the same way. It's absolutely fine. It will still be nice and light and airy. That's what we're aiming for. So I also put a few little chopped up bits of coriander in as well. So that's my dough. That's probably going to make, depending on how you make them, nice sort of light puffy.
Heidi in Holland has said, "You're always cooking so clean, I always make stains everywhere."
Years of experience, Heidi, of being covered in all kinds of stuff. I normally have my chef's whites on as well, but I'm getting used to not wearing those. So what I'm doing is I am heating up my oil in my wok or my graille just to get that ready so that it's at a nice temperature. So I've just popped that on. But before I do that, I'm also keeping an eye on my chickpeas. But what we're going to do is we are going to make these into breads. What I will show you is I can already see the little bubbles because it's leaven. So I just want to show you. Can you see? Can you see? So I just, if I... which way am I going? That way. Okay. So look at that. You see all that lovely, airy, yummy. See all the bubbles? That's what we're after. Okay. So normally you tend to flour the surface, but because these are going to be fried, we don't want a lot of flour or dried flour on them, because as soon as they go into the oil, that dry flour will burn and it just messes up your oil and so on. So we're not going to do that. What I tend to do is either use a little bit of oil on my hands. I'm just going to flatten them out, or we can roll them in a minute.
Talk about how you would make it without yeast.
We just covered that, have we not? I don't have a recipe without the yeast, but you can, so either add a teaspoon of bicarb, a teaspoon of baking powder into your flour, and just make that into, and you can use yogurt, you can use a little bit of sparkling water to try and help it and lift it. You will not get a rise as much as you get with yeast, obviously, so just be mindful of that. Or if you've got a sourdough starter, you can use a little bit of that, which is also good. Okay. So my oil is heating up. I'm just going to give it a little mix. I'll move the camera in a minute so you can see what I'm doing over there. Where are they? I'm just flattening it out because I don't want to. Now, you need to make sure that it stays fairly thick. So you sort of pat it out. If you can't pat it out, if you find that it's a bit sticky, just coat your hands in a little bit of oil and just do the same thing. Or you can even try and roll it out if you want to. So you could just roll it and so on. But you want it to be a good sort of couple of millimeters thick, because that's where you're going to get that lovely soft rise from. Now, one of the things that I meant to mention was a couple of people said that they couldn't get hold of yeast, so what could they do instead? And one of the other things that you can do is make puris. So I haven't mentioned puris before. Puris are essentially roti, so atta and flour, so roti dough. And what you do is you do exactly the same thing, but you roll them out and you deep fry those, and they puff up as well beautifully. So that's the other thing that you can do. Right, my chickpeas are really looking delish. That's looking really nice. Okay. Right, so I'm just going to wait for my oil to heat up before I do that. Now, a quick thing that you can do just to test your oil is just take a little bit of your dough and just pop it in. Now, you don't want your dough to be too hot, because otherwise your puri will it'll just brown too quickly. So you want it to puff up beautifully and go nice and soft. So I think my oil is hot enough, so I'm just going to. So the 250, I think 250 grams of flour will probably make about 4 to 6 bhature, depending on how big you make them and how thick you make them. But about 2. Some people do like them really thick and soft, so you know, they could make you as little as 4, but aim for 5 to 6. Okay, so there is my dough. Now the aim with these is we don't want them to go brown, we want them to stay really nice and white. And when you're doing this, very gently place it into the oil, and with your spoon we're just going to puff them up by pressing down and then turning, and that's it. And they will just puff up. Oh my goodness, look at that. Yum! Look at that. What a beauty. So that, can you see? Where am I going? Over here. That's what you want. Beautifully puffed up. It's going to be really bready and soft inside. So I'm going to do another one, and then I'll tear open this one to show you the inside.
Before you do, someone's asked, can you put black onion seeds in them?
You can put black onion seeds in them. You can put cumin seeds in them. You can flavour them up differently if you want to. I just think it looks nice with the green in there. But yeah, with naan breads, I tend to use black onion seeds. But with bhature, I tend to use coriander. Just personal preference, but absolutely there's no reason why you can't. So how much oil have I got in there? I've got enough to be able to submerge a roti. I would probably say it's quite a small vessel, this one. I can't, how much would I put in there? About 500 mils of oil. Just enough so that you can submerge the roti in there. So I'm just going to flatten this out again, and I'll show you. Could you see in the pan, or do you want me to lift up the camera to show you? If you want me to lift it up, I'm happy to do that, because it's quite nice to see it in the pan, I guess, if you can't see. but there's so many different types of Indian breads. Everyone always thinks about naan or roti, chapati, whatever. There are so many different types of breads that you can use. But do you want to see it in? Shall I show you in the pan? Okay, so very, very gently, just press that in, and you'll see, look, at just puffs up straight away, and then turn. Ideally, we don't want to get too much colour to this. A little bit of colour, but no more than that. There we go. I think that oil's got a bit too hot, so I'm going to turn that down. There we go. Turn that down a little bit, and then I'll come back to my chickpeas. They are looking amazing. Look, so it's thickened up lovely. I'm just going to have a little taste, and then we'll finish this off. So obviously these chickpeas are cooked already, but what we're wanting is them to absorb those lovely flavours. That's really yummy. It's really zingy. It's got a lovely kick to it. Nice. I'm happy with that. Okay, so our bhatura done. I'm going to continue to let that simmer for a minute because I did mention that we were going to do a very quick salad to go with it. So I'll just bring my chopping board back over here. What I've got here is some red onions that have been sliced really thinly. And we did do something similar last week. But what I've done is I've had them soaking in a little bit of salt water. And what that does is it takes out the sort of the harshness or the acrid harshness that you can get with onions. So that's been soaking probably for about half an hour. You can leave it for longer if you want to. And I'm just going to sieve that out once I find my sieve. Just going to sieve that out.
What makes this bread different from a puri?
So a puri isn't leavened. Puri is just, it's got no yeast in it. It's just flour. Let me turn around actually. So a puri and a bhatura are completely different breads, because a puri is just a dough of flour and water. Maybe you might have a little bit of oil in there, and then that's put in, and that goes crispy on one side and is and soft on the other side. These are like, and I'll show you the inside. If that helps. If I show you what it looks like on the inside. It's really, really soft and bready, so it's very, very different from a puri inside. Okay, right, so I'm just going to come back to my salad. So in here, I'm going to put a good squeeze of lemon. I am going to add a chili, but I'm going to add nice long shreds of chili. Oh, stuck to my finger. There we go. That goes in. And yeah, you can, if you're a bit worried about the heat, you can obviously take the seeds out, just scoop them out with your knife. I'm not going to worry about that too much. And I'm going to add a little bit of the chili powder for a bit of colour. And this is, it's almost like you're just pickling the onions a little bit with that lemon juice. It's already got the salt in there from the soaking. Okay, and I'm going to put a few galonji seeds in as well. So we get these in just for a little bit of a peppery bite it gives you almost. So there we go. Just a very, very quick salad to have with your chole and your bhature.
Have you ever cooked any of your recipes on an induction hob?
I have cooked some of my recipes on an induction hob. I'm not an induction hob fan, if I'm completely honest, but having said that, they're much better than they used to be, and you can, provided you've got the right pans and so on, it works really well. I've forgotten my coriander. Can you grab me some coriander out the fridge, please, Jai? So they do work. Don't think that you can't cook Indian food because you've got an induction hob. You absolutely can. There's no reason why you can't do it. Okay, right. Obviously, coriander.
And then, what brand of ghee do you use?
What brand of ghee do I use? So there's lots and lots of different brands of ghee. I've been doing a bit of work with these guys recently. So they're called, it's Dabur Organic Ghee. And it's obviously an organic ghee, which makes it a really nice light product. So I quite like them at the moment. I'm using them. I've used them a few in, you know, quite a few different recipes that I've cooked. Okay, so there we go. Your coriander.
What brand of knife do you use for chopping onions, etc.?
So what brand of knife do we get this question quite a lot. So what brand of knife do I use? I tend to use a Japanese make called Tajiro Senko. They are really nice light knives to use. They're made with the same technology they use to make samurai swords. I really like them. They're one of my favourite products in the kitchen. Okay, so a little bit of coriander goes in as well. So we've got lemon juice, we've got salt, a few kalonji seeds, shreds of chili, red onion in there. What else did I put in there? I said lemon juice, didn't I? So there's your sort of lemon pickle. And I'm just going to dish this up for you. So these are my chole. Now, just to finish this off, some garam masala, as always, which is the key to most amazing things, especially North Indian food. It just brings everything you've put into that dish together. And then to finish it, for that zing that we've been talking about, when it comes to this dish, I'm going to also add some amchur, because that gives that additional zing. And as I said, if you don't have that, a little bit of chaat masala works as well. So that goes in. Lovely. And then I'm going to put in, now depending on how you like it, you can, if you still want a little bit of zing. There we go. So there is my chole. I'm going to put some coriander on, and I'm going to add a little bit of lemon, and I'm going to let you squeeze that in yourself if that's what you want. So we move these out the way, and then obviously these amazing breads. And if you haven't tried bhature, honestly, they're just beautiful. They're really soft, they're really delicate. I'm gonna have a little bit of that just to taste it. And I know the kids are gonna be all over these in a minute. So there you go. There it is. Your chole bhature served with Punjabi piyaz. Pop that on top. A few little onions with homemade bhature.
Do you have to add garam masala?
There you go.
If you don't like the taste of it.
So if you don't like garam masala, then why would you add? If you don't like something, don't add it. It's that simple. If you don't like the taste of something, absolutely don't add it. But don't think of it as an entity on its own. Think of it as something that's integral. Sometimes it's quite important that you add it to the dish and you shouldn't be able to taste it on its own. It probably means you've added a little bit too much. Try it with a little bit less, but put it in that dish because it's really important to bring that whole dish together.
Chaat masala the same thing, I'm assuming, as
Chaat masala is the same as what? So, chaat masala and amchur are two different things. Chaat masala is more of a seasoning and is a blend of lots of different spices. Amchur is the dried rind of green mangoes, so it is slightly different. Chaat masala has amchur in it, if that makes sense.
What are the seeds in the salad?
The seeds in the salad are kalonji seeds or onion seeds. They're just little black, the seeds that you get in little naan breads. They've got almost like a peppery zing to them. Any more questions before we sign off? So there you go. In an hour, we've managed to cook a pretty tasty little dish here. So we've got chole, cooked with a real lovely Punjabi style zing, and bhatura, which are that lovely soft bread. We talked a little bit about how to make puri if you don't know how to do the bhatura. All of the recipes are on the website. They are also on the app, so please download the app if you don't have it. If you haven't taken any photos of us cooking, then please do take a picture of your final dish because I would love to see it. Please post it on the app and post it on Instagram, social media, wherever you might be. You know that I'm on everything, and I would love to see your pictures too. So there you have it. One final little thing that we have to say is that you're going to give that to me. That we've that, as I mentioned before, we've hit our 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. So thank you to all of you who've subscribed. It's amazing. And I'm just thrilled. But today, literally 5 minutes before we went on air, we received our plaque from YouTube. I haven't actually opened it yet. So I will be doing a little unboxing video later, just to share that with you, because it's because of you lot that we've managed to get it, and I'm very, very grateful. So thank you so much, but I'll share that with you later. So there we go. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in. I hope those of you who've been cooking have ended up with a really amazing dish that you can now toddle off and enjoy with a little drink on a Friday night. As I said, please do continue to share the channel with your friends and family, share the videos, help us sort of gain more subscribership. Thank you for tuning in. We'll be doing this again next Friday. I'm thinking we'll probably do a fish dish next week because we haven't done that yet, and I know that there's a few of you who would like to do something along those lines. So stay tuned. I will let you know what the dish is on Wednesday, and then we will cook together on Friday. So thank you very much, and big love. Have a lovely weekend and have a fantastic week. Thank you, guys.